Hello, beautiful people, friends. So, what is the latest update in the situation in Eastern Congo? So, for the past few days, there have been this peace summit in Burundi, hosted by the president of Burundi, Evariste Ndayishimiye, and it was trying to bring the two sides, that is the M23 side and the Congolese side, together to see how they can resolve what is happening there, the conflict. And the other good news is that South African Development Community, also known as SADC, has committed to send troops to Eastern Congo to try to fight the M23 and stop the conflict there. And this is after numerous requests from Kinshasa, right? So SADC, remember, had sent 4,500 troops back in 2012, and at the time, the M23 had about 9,000 to 10,000 fighters. M23 went even further to capture the city of Goma at the time. But these 4,500 SADC troops, most of them from South Africa, others from Tanzania, there were a few of them from Malawi, they were able to fight this M23 alongside the Congolese army and kick them out. Today we have about 4,500 troops from East African Community, also known as the East African Community Regional Force, ICRAF. And last week, as I told you, the commander of the ICRAF, a Kenyan lieutenant, left his post. He resigned, quoting frustrations from Kinshasa. And on Kinshasa's side, they said that he had softened, or rather he had a soft spot for the M23 rebels. In other words, he was listening to the Rwandan and the M23 propaganda and believing it. So that is now the situation. And I understand, I am a Kenyan myself. A lot of Kenyans, by the way, do not understand African history. They also refuse to educate themselves on the same. You'll find few Kenyans who love books, but a lot of them do not do that. And that's why it's easy to lie to them. And I understand Jeff Nyaga, the commander, could have been lied to by M23 and Paul Kagame. And since he's someone who doesn't understand the history of that region, definitely he had a soft spot for them. And that's why you were seeing, even when he was meeting them, M23 leaders, to get their position handed over to the ICRAF, he would act like he knows them, like they are friends, even though the rebels are the enemy. You know, you don't go to meet the enemies, even if you're a peacekeeper. You don't go to meet the enemies laughing and feeling comfortable around them. So anyway, back to the story. I'm going to show you a lot of newspapers are quoting this story of South African Development Community soldiers coming to Eastern Congo. So what do we have here? The Defense Post, one of the newspapers that covers defense issues on the continent, has said that South African troops to deploy against rebels in East Congo, right? And they say that South African countries on Monday agreed to deploy forces to help quell violence in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, where armed groups have terrorized civilians for decades. That is true. And then they go ahead to say it was a special summit of 16 South African Development Community countries, which includes South Africa, Angola, Tanzania. And they have backed the deployment to restore peace and security in Eastern Congo. And this is after all the heads of state, including the Congolese president Felix Tshisekedi and his South African counterpart Cyril Ramaphosa, Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu, and others, and ministers from all that group met, and they agreed to do that. And they didn't give the timeline, definitely, because you don't say everything in a summit. But it means that they are going to do that. And they said it's an immediate corrective action. So it is something that is top agenda for that group. And the East African newspaper says the same thing We also have this newspaper called the Chimp Report from Uganda, is also quoting the same thing. So, in other words, it's something that is going to happen. And I need to tell you that the South African community, development community, that is SADC, troops do not joke. They don't play around. Unlike the East African ones, which I said last week in a video that it seems they were there to hoodwink the Congolese. Because Kenyans, the commanders of the Kenyans, are being swayed by the lies from Paul Kagame. I even saw the Kenyan president, Ruto, go to Rwanda and seem like he's believing what Paul Kagame was telling him about Congo. And then we have Museveni. We know Museveni is not interested in fighting the M23 because half of the M23 troops were recently in Uganda. I keep saying that, and no one listens to me. And he is responsible for creating the M23. And he benefits when that region is not stable. So again, you understand, the 2,000 troops that Uganda pledged are there for the cameras. We've heard stories from the border town of Bunagana, where people say that to this day, they pay tax to the M23 while Ugandan troops are patrolling the streets. So you understand. That's why the South Africans, the Tanzanians, will come and solve this problem once and for all. Now, according to this story, and according to the UN, they say that at the moment, close to 1 million people have been displaced since last year in June, the time the M23 started their campaign. So according to this story, I'm going to zoom it in. The story goes that the rebel campaign displaced over 1 million people, and that is according to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. So it's serious because the last time I talked about the displaced people, I talked about 400,000. Now today, the number has gone all the way up to 1 million. Those are people 1 year ago were busy farming. They were busy, carrying on their lives, living their own normal lives. And today they are in refugee camps, internally displaced people or persons camp. So that is the latest. And I hope these South African community troops come to Congo in large numbers and solve this problem once and for all.